Hey, welcome once again to Rock Your Faith Out. I am Michael Kadrie, and my next guest really doesn't need any introduction, right? You know who he is, but I'll give him a little one. From the legendary band Stryper, we got Michael Sweet with us. What's up, Michael?
How you doing, buddy? Yeah, a lot of people don't know who I am or who we are, and that's okay. But we're trying to make everyone aware of who we are.
I guess that's because I'm from the same generation as you, right? So I grew up, listening to 80s, 70s, 80s, all that other stuff, and so to me, you're a household name, maybe not to everybody else, and that's another reason why I appreciate you guys are like getting in on all the Christian rock festivals and all that stuff. There's a lot of young people to go to those shows, and so yeah, it's getting it going to the next generation, right?
Oh yeah, and I mean just to everyone in general. I mean, whether you're young, you're old, you're middle aged, it doesn't matter how old you are. But what matters is the message, and
Right.
that's what we've been trying to deliver for 41 years now.
Wow.
Going on 42. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And, it's very important to us. And at the end of the day, that even matters more than the music. Music is great. It brings us all together. And, that's what we all share, a common love of music. But the message is really where it's at the end of the day when the amps are packed up and what lives on. So it's super important.
Yeah, and we'll get into a little bit of that, but I'd like to do something a little different on this show. Is I like to get a little more personal with people in their faith and their journey, and of course that's going to intertwine with Stryper and your music career and everything. But tell me about what kind of the household did you grow up in? Did you grow up in a faith-filled household, or what was that like when you were younger, like as a growing up?
Sure, I grew up in a household that knew of God, respected God, spoke about God on occasion, prayed on occasion, but we weren't a church-going family. From the time I was born to the age of 12-ish. We would go to church on occasion, but we weren't a family that went to church every week.
Right.
And what happened was we started getting into Jimmy Swaggart Ministries and watching Jimmy on television, and we all loved Elvis. And I think because of our love for Elvis, we loved Jimmy. And he was cousin to Jerry Lee Lewis and Mickey Gilley, and the way he played, we loved, and the way he sang kind of had the Elvis thing going on. And we were drawn to that. And then we started listening to his sermons, and that took root. And we all got saved in front of the television, basically. Family of 5. Mom, dad, brother, sister, and myself, and Rob, Lisa, and myself. And then not long after that, we got involved in a church, local First Southern Baptist Church. And we went twice a week. We were part of the music team, really got involved. Eventually, because of the rock and roll lifestyle in the Hollywood scene, which is where we lived in LA, we got caught up in that so much so that we fell away from church, my brother and myself.
Right.
And we stopped going, and we were just less and less interested in church, became more interested in rock and roll and trying to break out and whatnot. And that was around the age of, 15, something like that. And I rededicated my life. It's a long story. That would take 45 minutes just to tell that story. But basically rededicated my life at the age of 20.
Right.
And that's when I got serious about God again and rewrote all the lyrics. And that's when the band Rock's Regime decided to devote everything to God and ask God to bless it. And we became Stryper, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow, that's a good insight to the background of the origins of Stryper. Well, first of all, since I'm going to interject, since you're talking about your family, I wanted to offer my condolences for the loss of your father this year. Especially be right in the middle of a tour too. That had to be difficult.
It really was. I tell you, we left on that tour, South American tour, knowing what was coming. Right. My dad just wasn't doing well, and he had lost a lot of weight. and he was getting weaker and weaker. And he went back into the hospital right before we left for South America, and we just kind of knew. I knew in the back corners of my mind, this isn't good. And sure enough, we got the phone call while we were there, and we at least got to talk to my dad. And hopefully he could hear every word, and you know, and then he passed later that evening. But it was very difficult, and I was a lot of emotions going on at that time, you know. Frustration, sadness, bitterness, you know, anger even. It was just very strange. It was an overflowing of emotions, and I wanted to be there, and I couldn't, and I wasn't, and that's something I'll have to live with. But I know where my dad is. He had a deep faith, and I don't doubt for 1 second where he is. Nice. And I know he's not hurting anymore. All those things that people say, I really believe. No more pain. He's glorified, and that's incredible.
And you'll see him again someday, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Hopefully not for a while. Hopefully not for a while, though.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm going through my own health issues, but it's a tricky part of, you know, as we age, we all have to face something. You
and Oz. I mean, it's inevitable. You know what I mean? The older you get, something's going to happen, right?
Something's going to happen, and even those things that happen when you're somewhat younger and you don't expect anything to happen, and it does. I mean, it doesn't pick and choose,
right?
You know, it's usually unexpected, and you know, we all have to face those situations. And you know, I'm blessed that I am still here, and you know, I'm pretty proactive with my health. My wife is even more proactive. So I don't know what else I could do other than just recommend that to people to stay on top. Those people that say they haven't seen a doctor in 25 years, that just blows my mind.
Right. Yeah. Do you not care, right?
I don't get it, but I see my doctor if there's any issues going on.
Good.
And try to deal with it and stay on top of it.
Well, at least, yeah. I mean, not just from a music standpoint, but from a human standpoint. You know, people want to see you around for as long as possible. So,
yeah, 100%. And I want to be around as long as I can. And I feel in my heart that there's still a lot of work to be done and a lot to do. And I still have that desire and that calling. So, you know, I look forward to that.
Yeah, well, you definitely try to stay busy. I can tell that. You know, a lot of different projects and everything you've got. But I want to go back to, like I said, after the origins of Stryper was formed. You know, at that time in the early to mid 80s, there were, I don't want to say a lot, but there were a handful of what you would call like hair metal Christian bands coming up through the ranks and whatnot. You know, I mean, but Stryper was pretty much the only one to really break through mainstream and cross over and get on MTV and all this stuff. And I would like to attribute that to, you know, well, two things. First of all, God, you know, but also the music. Because, you know, so while the other stuff was, you know, very good music in its own right, you know, Stryper was kind of, you were right in the thick of everything that people were listening to and was important and popular at that time. But, you know, you came right, I mean, you weren't even trying to be subliminal with your message about God. You were like right out there in your face which was amazing. And I know a lot of people at the time were saying, well, that's just a gimmick or whatever. So how do you get past that? First of all, how do you get past that to say, no, we're going to stay true to our faith, and then get through the little crowd of other people trying to do what you're doing and come out on top?
Well, there's a lot to that. You said a lot there. There's a lot to it. Yeah. I you know, just being totally honest, I really believe there's a number of reasons why Stryper broke out the way that we did and crossed over, as you put it, which is the perfect way to put it. We really did. We kind of were able to break out and not just be a Christian a CCM band and just get airplay in the Christian market or sales in the Christian market, but also mainstream. And it was even probably a little more mainstream. About 2/3 of our sales were through mainstream, a third through the Christian market back in the day. And I think it is for the reasons, one, the most important, you said God, of course, no doubt about that. But I think we were shaped early on to be that band. I don't know why. I think God chose us. It could have been any other band.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely. We're nothing special. We're no better than anybody at all. But what happened was we were shaped and formed in the mainstream Hollywood, streets of LA.
Right.
With all these other bands, Rat, Motley Crue. I mean, we were right there. All these other Christian bands weren't.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So we were kind of living that whole lifestyle and part of that scene. Then we rededicated our lives and we just continued doing what we did musically, but we changed the message.
Right.
But we had the same sound and the yellow and black and all that stuff, and people could relate to that, people that weren't believers. And then with the lyrics, people that were believers could relate to that. And people thought, oh my gosh, this is different. You had Res Band, Sweet Comfort Band, Petra, but we weren't really comparable to any of those bands.
Right, exactly.
We were kind of our own thing. And I don't want to say we invented it. We didn't certainly invent that movement musically. But at the same time, there was no band like Stryper.
No, 100%.
In 84, love us or hate us, there was not one band. And because of who we were, we got the interest of a mainstream label, and Enigma Records, and they signed us. And it was funny because they signed us based on our popularity in the area. But once we turned in the lyrics, they were questioning signing us, and they almost dropped us. Because they said, wait a second here, you guys are Christian? What?
They didn't get that?
They didn't get that, apparently, which was really bizarre because I don't know how you could miss Jesus is the way during a break.
Right.
Jesus.
Right.
It's like, okay. But they were questioning their signing of the band. And we basically had a meeting with them and more or less convinced them to move forward with it. And they did. And it really took off. And I think to them at the time, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm just guessing it was probably more a financial investment than a spiritual investment.
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't Christians. They were, when we walked in and took a meeting with them, they had candles lit everywhere. And we said, what's this all about? And they said, we're celebrating Aleister Crowley's birthday.
Oh, boy.
Now, I think it was more in fun and jest, but that was the kind of label we were signing to, and we just felt like that's where God wanted us.
Yeah.
And then once the album started selling, they started making money, they probably felt that's where God wanted us.
Right. It was a great juxtaposition, though, right? I mean, because of all the Vegas is Sin City, but come on, LA lives up more to that than Vegas. But you're right in the belly of the beast there, and I think that could be another reason why God planted you there, and blessed you guys. Because even though I grew up going to a Catholic school when I was in elementary school, as I got older, like God wasn't. I believed in God and everything. I just didn't pay attention to him as much when I was in my 20s. It wasn't an important part of my life. But when Stryper came along, the music hit me. And I'm like, I'm a big fan of big vocals and harmonies and stuff like that. So that's where you guys got me in the hooks and the melodies and everything. And then I started hearing the lyrics and I'm like, this is different, and I remember going to see you guys one time at the Syria Mosque Ballroom here in Pittsburgh, was no longer there, and you're throwing out Bibles to the crowd, little Bibles.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I think these guys are the real deal. And so it actually, like, your faith in your music made me more attracted to you guys, even though I wasn't like really have a good relationship with God and Christ at that time. So it was a precursor, I think, for me falling in love with Christian, hard rock later on in the early 2000s and stuff.
Well, look, I'll tell you, I might shock a lot of people by this statement, but you said, your relationship with God, maybe you weren't as close to God at that time. We weren't either.
Wow.
I mean, we under the name Stryper, I mean, we were trying. We were innocent. We were just like saying, we just want to be used, but at the same time, we were still sinners, We're still out there, doing things that we probably shouldn't have been doing.
Right.
But God worked on that. And over time, God did a lot through us and in us. But, we were just a very unusual band. Musically, most of our friends and our peers grew up on just one band or two bands that they loved. That's all they listened to. We grew up on everything. Like, we would literally put on a Van Halen album or a Judas Priest album, and then we'd put on a Beach Boys album and a Queen album and a Lionel Richie album, a Whitney Houston album. We listened to everything.
Right.
And I think that kind of comes out just a bit here and there in our music. Right. You can hear the influence of Queen and the Beach Boys in certain vocals. Right. And it's very eclectic, but that's what makes Stryper.
Yeah, and it's always great to pull in, influences and blend. I mean, that's what most great successful bands are, right? They're not just, let's just be a copy of so-and-so. Let's be a Led Zeppelin copy or let's be a, Who copy or whatever, or a Beatles copy. It's a blend of everything that you loved and, listened to and make it your own.
So true. So true. And we never sat down and took an album ever. And I mean this sincerely. We never took an album and sat down and said, all right, let's write like this. Let's sound like this. Let's do this. We've never done that. I think all these influences kind of subconsciously and unknowingly came out in our music. And that's why we have a metal song like Yahweh, or go back further in time, the classic era, Soldiers Under Command, or Rock That Makes Me Roll, or anything like that. And then you hear a ballad like Honestly or Together as One. That's why we kind of went from one end of the spectrum to the next, because of our influences.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you said too that like you were kind of baby Christians at that time. You were just beginning your walk and your journey with Christ. Yep. And to me, that speaks volumes to how God had a big play in what you were doing, because if you, even to this day, you go back and listen to the classic stuff, the passion for Christ sounds so genuine and so big and so like, Jesus is the only way. He's the man, you know what I mean? Yeah. And, in God we trust. Listen to that, you know what I mean? As there's just, makes me want to sing, when you sing about Jesus, it sounds like you've been like tight with the Lord for 20 years at that point in time. So you were definitely being influenced by the Holy Spirit. Oh,
no, for sure. And we were just like children. Like we would just, innocently say, we'll do it. Like go on this stage and go proclaim the name of Christ and toss out Bibles. Okay, where? We wouldn't say like now. Right. Let me think about that. Right. And get back to you. We were just innocent and willing to do whatever it took. And I think because of that, God blessed us and really had his hand upon us for sure.
Yeah, you were soldiers under command, literally.
We literally were. And like things happened that nobody could explain. Like breaking new ground and playing the Troubadour, having played Gazzari's a week prior to 100 people, and then a week later playing the Troubadour and being on the front cover of the next day's newspaper because they had to turn away 1,000 people that went all the way up to the next street over, and everyone's like scratching their head saying, what is happening here? This is weird.
Right.
It was this, this surge and this unexplainable fire that was being ignited, and Stryper just went, oh, and it was really intense.
At Zovation Consulting, we help streamline and optimize your production process. We're here to enhance your project with expert guidance and creative, scalable solutions. We specialize in helping churches and ministries, independent filmmakers, podcast producers, or those looking to create the next great music video. Visualize, optimize, realize. Zovation Consulting.
Well, how did you get through? How did you work through the negativity of people saying that they're posing and they're not real, and they're just using this as a gimmick, whatever, because nobody else was doing it, and maybe the label saw this as, hey, this is a good gimmick, you know what I mean? But how did you personally, in your faith, work through that? I mean, is it just as simple as ignoring those people?
Well, a few things. We lived in a time where we didn't have to see it or hear it as much. Now,
oh, true, yeah.
Now we see it and hear it every hour.
Oh.
Someone texts you, did you see this? Email, hey, check out this link. They're saying some stuff about, it's constant. And that's because of technology and the internet. Back in the day, we didn't have to really deal with that as much. But when we did, it would usually be live and in person. So in other words, I remember Jimmy Swaggart Ministries, how we got saved. They were picketing our shows.
Wow.
They were out front with bullhorns, telling people not to go in. We're of the devil. We're wolves in sheep's clothing. We're evil. We're this, we're that.
And like, hey, we're here because of you.
I know. And we would go out and explain that to them. That's the thing we always did. And we still do. We always will go the extra mile to try to educate people. And we would go out with tickets. Whenever we'd hear, hey, Jimmy Swaggart's out, ministry's outside, there's 10 people with bullhorns. I'm like, oh, cool. All right, give me some tickets, blah, blah, blah. Let's go out. And we'd go out and we'd talk to them. Right. And we'd say, hey, guys, listen, we got tickets right here. First of all, have you ever seen us? They'd say no. And then we'd say, well, then how can you be picketing what you don't even know?
Right.
Why don't you come in and check out the show and then decide if you want to picket us or not?
Great idea.
Some of them would, and most of the time they would not. But at least we would try to speak to these people and educate them and maybe find some common ground. But that didn't always work out.
Yeah, of course. Well, haters going to hate is what they say, right? So.
And look at half of the time, not half of the time, most of the time, it's based on hate and ignorance.
Right.
All this stuff going around about Charlie Kirk. I just posted a happy heavenly birthday a few days ago. Yes, it might have been yesterday or the day before when his birthday was. And
that's worth an attack, yeah.
And I got under fire, man. I lost well over 100 people within 5 minutes. Just the numbers just started dropping. And then people were commenting saying, I can't believe you're posting this. You're a bad person. He was an evil man who, was a bigot, a racist and hateful, blah, blah, blah. And all I would say, I would just respond with, show me.
Yeah.
Show me. I want to see it. Where?
Right.
What? Because everything I've seen, I'm not getting that. I'm not getting that at all. But see, it's always based on people not being educated and just going on hearsay.
Right. And headlines. That's what hearsay and headlines.
Exactly. And that's what Stryper went through for years, and we still go through it. It's people don't even know what they're talking about. It's like, we hate them, we hate them, we hate them. It's like, wow, you don't even know us.
Right. Yeah, and that's what kind of weird is that, I guess I came into it and was introduced to Stryper from the radio and from MTV. So I just came into it totally naive and fresh and clear-minded and open-minded. And I think when you have a starting point of not a bias one way or the other, like, hey, I'm a Christian, I'm going to see if these guys are really it, or I'm an atheist and I don't want to even listen to these guys, I don't even want to give them a chance. You come into it from a fresh perspective and open mind, you're going to get handed the truth, and that's a reality in anything, and whether it's politics, whether it's family, whether it's religion, whether it's music, that's a solid truth. It's just you go into it with an open mind, not with a bias, and you're going to get to the truth. And the truth was, you guys were great.
And that comes from maturity.
Yeah.
It takes a certain level of maturity to be open-minded. People that aren't open-minded, that are one-sided, they're usually lacking a maturity. At least this is my opinion.
I agree.
You have to have an open mind, and that's how you learn. And you either want to learn or you don't want to learn. And unfortunately, sadly, a lot of people don't want to learn. They have this wall up. And it's like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Well, what do you mean? You don't want to hear the truth?
I think they're just lazy too. I mean, they just, how it takes some effort. It takes a little bit of effort to find the truth. And that's the problem. It's so much easier just to believe whatever source you have or whoever's telling you whatever they want to tell you. Yep. And, I've heard someone say, well, maybe you're the one being lied to. I'm like, well, you can't be lied to unless you're believing whatever someone's telling you on face value. If you're doing your own research and you're like getting to the root of it and going to sources, and I'm doing my own research, then I'm the only person to be lying to me is me. 100%. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but people 100%. Don't want to take that extra step.
But I mean, and sadly though, we live in this crazy world where, there's so much good that comes from our technology and the internet and socials and everything we have at our fingertips. But there's probably even more so much bad. We all get our coffee and, we go on our phones and we look for news and whatnot. And unfortunately, a lot of the news is just not good news.
Right.
And now there's AI, and it's like you don't even know what to believe. You don't know what's real.
What's real, right?
There's imagery, video, photos of people that looks real.
Yep.
And you don't know if it's real or not, and odds are it's probably not. But it's like it's just going to get worse.
Yeah. You have to know what to look for. And again, it comes back to laziness. And if you don't want to just take a look for a second and you can see, at least right now, maybe 10 years from now, 5 years from now, you won't be able to distinguish the difference between AI and reality. But right now, if you look, you can spot things.
If someone has 5 fingers and they move their hand, and there's 6 fingers just for a split second. It's like, Or
if Bigfoot's talking to you, that's probably not a real video. Whatever. I want to get back to something here. When you guys were first starting up, were you and Robert always aligned spiritually and with your faith? Did you kind of walk through that together, or did one pull another? How did that work out with you and Robert?
Well, it's interesting because, and Rob might have a different version or take on this than I do, just to be fair, and put that out there. Initially, when we accepted Christ as a family, really that was more a Robert thing. Rob was the one that was really kind of steering that ship, right? At that time.
Interesting.
But then you fast forward to when we rededicated our lives, and I believe I was kind of steering the ship at that time. God was really moving on me, and I remember all of us questioning whether we should do it or not, and I just went and did it. I went inside. I came out the next day, and I had a bunch of lyrics rewritten. I said, I did it. I said, we're doing this. And the guys were kind of looking at me like, okay, so I was kind of steering the ship at that time. Right. But Rob and I have always had that agreement of what's holy versus what's not. And we know that when God's moving, if he's moving, how he's moving, and we know we have that connection for sure, no question.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, and I think it's important, especially if he's going to be a bandmate of yours, not just your brother, but a bandmate, someone you're working with and traveling with and stuff. And especially in your line of work with your music and everything, if you're not in lockstep with one another, or there's not too much friction between the two. So you don't have to be clones of each other, but as long as you're both still seeking the same path, I think that's probably the only way that works. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's, you go back or forward, depending upon what time frame you're looking at. In 1992, I left the band. Mm-hmm. And that separated my brother and myself. Separated all of us. I didn't speak to the guys for quite a long time, but my brother as well. I remember going over to my mom's house. My brother was living with my mom at the time, my mom and dad, and he wouldn't come out of his room. I wouldn't even see him, so it was a very awkward time. And that was based on, I can only, speculate and guess. I think I'm probably right by doing so, that was based on me leaving the band. And I think maybe Rob viewed it as a betrayal. And, he was hurt by that, which I understand. But at the same time, it was a situation where if I didn't do what I did, I think my marriage would have failed. And I don't think, I know it would have. Right. Because it was failing. And had I not left the band, it would have crumbled. And I had 2 children, my daughter and my son, and I didn't want that to happen. That meant more to me than a band. Yes, a ministry, but that was more important to me. And I left, and I did what I had to do, and I have no regrets whatsoever, because that was a time when the band was really in a bad place. We kind of had gone back to the old man, if you will. And we were drinking heavily and partying and, doing things that we should not have been doing. And those doors kept opening wider and wider. And I just said to myself, this is just ridiculous. And I got out, and I'm glad that I did. And here I am. And now we're back together. And, we're continuing on, and we've done a lot of incredible things. God has really worked through us, and some miracles have taken place. It's really cool.
Would you, speaking of, I wouldn't call this a miracle, but maybe divine intervention, at least from the outside looking in, do you look at hooking up with Perry as divine intervention? Because he seems to be a perfect fit for you guys.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest. I've told this story before, but I think it's gone off the radar. I remember at the time when we parted ways with Tim, we were looking and talking to other bass players at the time. Even Rudy Sarzo, we were talking to.
My buddy Rudy.
I love Rudy. Yeah. What an incredible heart, and what an incredible musician, a legend.
Right.
And we were excited about that possibility. We were talking to Sean McNabb.
Another good guy.
A number of guys we were looking at and talking to. And then Dave Rose, our co-manager now, he mentioned Perry, and I thought, oh my gosh, I never even thought of Perry.
Right.
Because I wasn't a huge Firehouse fan. I always loved them, but I was never a big fan. I never just, for whatever reason, got into them. And I thought, wow, that could be really cool. That's interesting. So I talked to Perry. We flew him in, and he came to my house with the band, Oz and Rob, and we all met with him, and we just felt like, yeah, this is perfect. From his favorite color being yellow to 777 being part of his certain accounts and passwords, and him showing us pictures of him with us back in '85.
Wow.
Max Havoc, not Max Havoc, Max Warrior, performing with us, his old band, and just the list goes on and on. And he plays incredible, he sings incredible, and he's a great guy. So it just made perfect sense. And we knew, like, boom, this is it. And we did it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it just seemed to be a perfect fit for you guys, at least from the outside looking in. So I just was curious to how that came about. So thanks for filling in that story.
And to elaborate on that just a little bit more, I read comments from people. I see them all the time about how we'll never be Stryper without Tim, or it's not the same, or blah blah. And I just think to myself, you gotta be productive. You gotta be happy. You got to be, when you're in a band, especially, because it's like very similar to a marriage. It has to be a situation where you're all kind of the same mind and on the same page, whatever cliche you want to use. That's very important.
Right.
And with Perry, we are. And not to take anything away from Tim. Tim was awesome, and a big part of the history of the band.
Right.
But Perry is now our new player, and he is equally as big a part of the history of the band, if not more so. If you want to statistically break that down, he's been with us for almost 10 years.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that goes by fast.
kind of crazy.
If you want, I was just saying, if you want an interesting take on if this comes up again with somebody, I interviewed Lawrence Gowan before from Styx.
Yep.
And
I love him.
His take on where Styx is at with all the different members they've had in the band, from Glenn Burtnick and from Todd Zuckerman now as their second drummer with himself and the different bass players. So he said Styx is the culmination of everybody that's been in the band throughout. Even back to John Suralewski back in the 70s, sure. Before Tommy Shaw. Because he liked it. He goes, he was watching the Rolling Stones live one day, and he's like, oh, look, there's Keith, and look, there's Mick, and there's Ron. And then he started thinking, well, wait a second, Ron is the third bass player, or third guitar player that the Stones have had. Yeah. He's not the first, he's the third. Yeah. So think about that. Perry is just a culmination of what has come before him, and you guys are just living that out on stage and in the studio now with new music. That's how I would look at it.
100%. And more important than how we sound, how we look, and the presentation is how we are. Right. Are emotionally, spiritually, in terms of the camaraderie and the friendship and the relationships. That's more important. And I'm not saying that it was, I'm not implying, I hope I'm not implying that it was terrible in the past, but I'm just stating that it's really great now. And we're blessed by that and happy for that. So Perry's a great fit, and he's the man. And man. And by the way, the Styx guys, one of my favorite bands. Had the pleasure of touring with those guys with Boston, and you got to see them night after night, man. And they are all the real deal. Every one of those guys. Oh my word! Wow,
great bunch of guys. Yep. Anyway, when you talk about the internet and stuff, something good came in. One of the best things I've seen on the internet in the last couple of years was a video that self-posted from John Cooper of Skillet and him and Kevin Young from Disciple jamming at to Stryper on stage. What festival was that? Oh my goodness, it was last year.
I want to say that was Alive, but I could be wrong. I think it was a live festival.
It was something like that. But anyways, they're on the backstage videotaping themselves. I think it was they were doing like "To Hell with the Devil" or something like that, or whatever. And they're just rocking out with smiles on their face and everything like that. Okay, that made the internet that day when they posted that. If anybody was paying attention to that stuff.
Well, so it's interesting, man. You talk to both guys, Kevin. There's a history there with Kevin and Stryper, and growing up and liking the music and the band and whatnot, and then with John as well. And I think John has gone as far as to even say that there wouldn't be a Skillet without Stryper. And I don't know if that's necessarily true.
But he paved the way.
Well, I mean, I know. I guess we did, but at the same time, I still feel like all these bands still would have come on the scene. They might have just been different versions of themselves, but who knows?
Right.
But man, just the fact that they're fans, and then I'm fans. I'm a fan. We're fans of what they're doing as well.
Right.
It's incredible, and our paths cross on occasion with both bands. And when that happens, it's just a special moment. Really cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So one last thing I want to say, and then we got to wrap up here. Do you find it different today? You guys are still cranking out albums. Is the songwriting process and how you inject your faith into the music and the lyrics and everything, is that any different than it was back in the day? Or are you still, like, do you go into prayer? Do you go to, like, contemplative prayer? Do you, like, just whatever happens to come to you? Like, what's the process now versus then?
Well, I mean, of course, I pray when I'm writing, but I could always pray more. You know, I'm one of those guys where I'm so hyper-focused and I get so distracted due to my ADHD, which I've talked about many times over the years, that sometimes I forget to pray, you know, and that's not a good quality. But yes, of course. Everything lyrically is biblical, biblically based. The process is really, that's the thing I think a lot of people misinterpret or they confuse is the writing process. I think people have this way of thinking that we always all wrote as a band. And I always get flack for it when I say I'm writing the new album, and people are like, not all, but some people will come out and say, oh my gosh, you know, well, why don't you do it like the old days and all you guys get in a room together and write the album? And I'm like,
doesn't always work that way.
That never happened. That's not how it was. It just isn't how it was. And the reality is, most of the time, I was in a corner of the studio while Oz was rehearsing or varnishing something with Man of War, and Robert was taping something. I was in the corner writing songs. And I was kind of always the music guy. Rob was always the visual guy. And that's just how it's always been. So that's how it continues to be. It works. There's a certain structure and format to that. And everyone seems happy with it, you know, the band and the fans. So we just keep doing what we don't fix what ain't broken, that old saying.
Right.
Why try to do that? It just works, and the label's happy. We had a meeting with the label. I said, what do you guys want us to do on the next album? Let me hear it. What do you want? And they're like, what you did on the last album. We love it. You know,
and more of that, right?
I'm like, oh, okay, we can do that. You know, so everyone seems happy and pleased with how things are going. And I'm writing the next album now. I always try to do something a little different without reinventing the wheel. I always try to stretch out a little bit and try some little different flavors here and there, or spices or what have you. And I'm doing that. I will do that. But yeah, it's going to be a Stryper album, and hopefully it's going to be our best album. We always shoot for that. And we'll record it in January and February, finish it in March, turn it in April, and it'll come out next year.
That's awesome. Looking forward to that. And, you know, I still like the new stuff that you guys are doing. Even, you know, Do Unto Others, Yahweh, and some of the newer songs off the new album. Because as soon as, like, you guys release it, I'm on, you know, Apple Music. I'll download it and I'll listen to the whole thing, like, in its entirety. And I'm like, yeah, still Stryper. It might, you know, like you said, it's a little nuance from album to album, but it's still Stryper. So keep it up. Definitely.
What we're going to do, one thing we will do that's different on this album is we're going to write a song that doesn't end. So the whole album will just be one song, like 45 minutes.
You're going to give Iron Maiden a run for their money. That's not what you're saying. And then you got You got the Christmas album coming out. Is this all new music? Is it? I mean, I know some of the songs that have been recorded in the past. So are these re-recordings, or is it a culmination of things you've done in the past, or new and combined with new stuff? What is the new Christmas album going to be? Well,
I'll tell you what it is. It's 10 songs. 2 of those songs are remakes of Winter Wonderland and Reason for the Season.
Yeah.
We felt led to do that because we sound different now.
Okay.
It's 40 some odd years later, and we felt like let's show the people what modern day versions would sound like.
Right.
So that's what we did. And we've got 4 brand new original songs, and they're all different. They're all a little different. And then we've got, and those are songs that literally you could play on the radio, you could listen to in your car anytime. You could do that in July. You could do it in April. It's not that they don't necessarily sound like Christmas songs, but they are Christmas songs.
Right.
And then we did 4 other traditional Christmas songs.
Nice. So there is
It's
something
a full
for the
album,
Christmas
man.
season. So, right. Yeah.
I can't wait for people to hear it.
Yeah, everybody make sure you get that whenever it comes out. And when Stryper is in your area, go check them out. And if you like this interview and other ones I've done, please like it and share it. Tell all your friends about it. And we would really appreciate it. So, Michael, I usually like to close out in prayer. You mind if I do that real quick?
No, man, that's awesome. I love it.
All right, Father God, thank you for this time with Michael. Thank you for the gift of his talents to the world and what he's done with Stryper and with other musical people like George Lynch and his solo projects and for Boston. Please continue to bless him and give him the creativity that he needs to continue writing and recording songs. Please bless him in his health. Put a shield over him, Lord, to protect his health and also defend him from the haters of the world that are out there. Give him the strength and the grace to deal with the people, the negative people and the forces that are out there, because they are strong, and they're probably stronger than ever now thanks to this internet and social media that has been taken over by Satan. So please protect him in all his travels, protect his family, and bless him for all the days of his life. And we ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. That's awesome, brother. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And I hope to see you in person sometime.
Yeah, when you come to Pittsburgh next, we'll try to hook up. So definitely. So for Michael Sweet,
great.
I am Michael Kadrie. We'll see you next time on Rock Your Faith Out. Yeah.